Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 5th of November, 2021. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So, I came across this post, I think yesterday, and I just got around to reading it today, called Ethereum-powered ZK Rollups World Beaters. Now this post comes from Crypto Canti here, you can see his Twitter account down here, you can go check that out. But essentially what this post does, it basically brings together a lot of what I've been talking about over the last probably 2 to 3 months now on the Refuel. A lot of the work that obviously Polynar has done has kind of like inspired this, it seems. But basically, it seems to be a living and breathing document about how Ethereum is going to scale long term. All the stuff that we've spoken about before, like rollups and sharding, data availability, volitions, validiums, all that good stuff there. But what Canti does in this post is just bring it all together in like a really easily digestible way and kind of explains the long-term vision, kind of like how they see it playing out and all that good stuff there. So obviously, I highly recommend giving this whole post a read. I'm going to be sending this to people that ask me from now on about kind of what is the Ethereum roadmap, right? What is the Ethereum scaling roadmap, I should say. So, what does that look like? When a fee is going to get lower? All that sort of stuff there. Because as you guys know, like I said the other day, there's still a lot of people who believe that fees are going to instantly be lower when this magical thing called ETH2 comes. When that's not actually the Ethereum scaling roadmap. The roadmap comes in multiple phases. At the most high level, it's kind of like rollups happening. I guess like rollups don't happen in phases, but like they're going to happen kind of across over the next few years as all this other stuff comes out. But the first phase would be the merge going through, and then the others is sharding and statelessness. Those are the kind of like three big things that are happening in the Ethereum roadmap. The merge obviously doesn't do anything for scalability, but what it does do is it basically gets us off proof of work onto proof of stake, which again, consensus mechanisms have little to do with scaling. And I've seen, actually I should pause here and kind of like hone in on this point here. Another thing that I've seen is that people seem to think that, and it was kind of bizarre when I came across this, but people have been saying, all these other proof of stake networks are really cheap to use. So when Ethereum goes to proof of stake, it'll be cheap to use. That is not how it works at all. And I get why people think like this, because really there's no proof of work smart contract blockchains that, I think there is maybe one or two, maybe, that kind of existed once upon a time, but all the popular ones are proof of stake, of course. But that has nothing to do with their scalability. Their scalability comes from other areas, such as sacrificing decentralization, centralizing nodes in order to kind of like have bigger block sizes, in order to offer more scalability. That's what pretty much like all of them do. But it's got little to do with the consensus mechanism. So I think that's where the misunderstanding is coming from, where people kind of seem to think that these other networks are more scalable because they're proof of stake, which isn't true. But yeah, as I was saying, like the merge goes through first, and then after the merge, sharding and statelessness, sharding works to enhance layer 2s, so does statelessness to an extent, but statelessness is a much bigger upgrade for layer 1 in general, in terms of like scaling that up there as well. So those are the kind of like main things obviously to focus on, but this post kind of wraps that up in a nice, easy to digest thing. Explains the differences between the different rollups, specifically optimistic and ZK rollups, and also around things like volitions and validium. So definitely go check this out. As I said, this is going to be probably my go-to to send to people when they ask me about Ethereum scaling roadmap, because I think it's a really well-written piece. And as I said, it seems to be a living, breathing document as well, so I expect it to evolve over time. So Rocket Pool has announced that they'll be launching on mainnet again on the 9th of November. So you remember that Rocket Pool had to delay their launch due to some critical bugs that were found, but they are going to be launching now on the 9th of November, which is only 4 days away. So really, really close. This is super exciting, of course, and you can read this kind of blog post here for all the details about it. This is not a new blog post. It's pretty much the same one that they put out back when they announced the original kind of mainnet date. But the reason why this is obviously so exciting is because Rocket Pool is aiming to be the only, or at least is going to be the only decentralized ETH2 staking protocol for quite a while. Now, they've got a bunch of different mechanisms of how they actually achieve this, and there's blog posts about this. You can go read all the details here. You can see part 1, the overview of Rocket Pool, part 2, the protocol itself and the Oracle node DAOs, part 3, RPL token and its tokenomics, and part 4, which is this article, which is the launch details. So obviously a lot of people in the community are very excited for this. There is a very passionate Rocket Pool community out there, which I've had the pleasure of conversing with a few times before. They're really awesome people. I think the Rocket Pool community really embodies the spirit of Ethereum, just like totally aligned with the Ethereum mission, care deeply about the technology, care deeply about keeping, Ethereum decentralized, especially when we move to proof of stake, making sure things like client diversity are respected, making sure that everyone can participate, even if they don't have 32 ETH, and making sure that's all done in a very decentralized way. So yeah, I mean, it's funny because obviously I talk a lot about people needing to solo stake. Like I would say that if you have the 32 ETH, you should definitely solo stake. You shouldn't go with an exchange or anything like that. But I mean, 32 ETH is a lot of money these days. So obviously not many people have that, especially newer people, like new people into the ecosystem. Very rarely will you get someone who just drops over $100,000 on 32 ETH to stake. So their only choice right now is to go through something like Lido, which is, it's still a centralized kind of system. They plan to decentralize over time, but Lido basically just splits up the stake into different staking service providers, which is definitely kind of like centralized. And then you have centralized exchanges, which obviously are very centralized. And these are the only options really for people right now who have less than 32 ETH. Whereas Rocket Pool is going to come in and basically say, well, we're offering an alternative, and we're offering an alternative that plans to be decentralized and is trying to be decentralized, which is exactly what we want to see. We want people. We obviously want to keep the ETH2 protocol. I guess once it's merged, it'll just be Ethereum. But we obviously want to keep staking as decentralized as possible. Because I've written about this in the newsletter before, quite a while ago actually, but there's people that have concerns over staking and say, staking is probably just going to centralize around a few big parties. And, I think to an extent it already has. And this is just kind of like the natural kind of progression of things, unfortunately. It happens in proof of work as well. Economies of scale kick in, and it just makes more sense from that point of view as well. But with proof of stake, we have a very kind of like, I guess, a very special opportunity to change the balance there, because we can offer decentralized staking services. There's also, in addition to Rocket Pool, there's also things like Obel Network, which are working on allowing users to kind of like have a hybrid approach where essentially they can do something called SSV, which allows them to still retain control of their kind of like validator keys, but kind of like delegate the validating to another service. So, you could still withdraw your funds out of kind of like that validator, but you're still at risk of the validator going down or getting slashed from the service provider. So there is definitely a spectrum of solutions here, but that's what kind of like is so special about proof of stake. But on the centralization note, in the piece that I wrote, I basically said that there are other mechanisms built into the Ethereum kind of like beacon chain that dissuade people from doing anything with the stake, even if they've got like a large amount of stake. Obviously, the biggest one of that is slashing. So if you attempt to do something wrong or do something against the protocol rules, there's a very high chance that you're going to get slashed. Now, for example, if a centralized exchange was to basically say, well, we have like, say they have like, and I don't think any has this at this point, but say they have like 33% of the stake, and say they want to start kind of like doing some funky stuff with the beacon chain, they're going to get slashed. And that ETH is not theirs, that's their customers' ETH. So imagine them having to explain to their customers why they actually got slashed, right? It's because they tried to attack the network, they've lost all this ETH, and they'd have to either cover it out of their own pocket, or a lot of them would suffer lawsuits from all their customers, even if they did cover it out of their own pocket. There's a lot of like legal and regulatory risk there for these exchanges as well. So that kind of like acts as a disincentive mechanism. But then, you can think about other things like, well, what if the nation states kind of like took over these exchanges and basically got a hold of these validators and used it to do their bidding? That's why we want it to be decentralized. Like, we're not trying to defend against actors that we assume are going to be honest pretty much most of the time, and it's in their best interest to be honest. We're trying to defend against nation states when it comes to Ethereum's layer 1 protocol. Like I spoke about it yesterday, for Ethereum to be a civilizational trust anchor, it needs to be able to resist even the most adversarial kind of conditions. And that is nation states at the end of the day. Like huge governments, huge kind of like well-funded groups that can potentially do damage to Ethereum if it's not kind of run in a healthy and sustainable way. And yeah, that comes back to what Rocket Pool is trying to do by decentralize the stake out further, not stop people from having to go to centralized services in order to stake if they have less than 32 ETH. So I'm super excited to see this finally go live on mainnet. Rocket Pool have been building, I think, since 2016. So it's been 5 years now. The team there, not just their community, the team, true Ethereans, like really, really big fans of those guys and really big fans of what they've been doing. And they've been through a lot to get to this point. They had to basically rewrite their protocol when the beacon chain kind of like changed specs because ETH2 has been a pretty big evolving thing over time. So yeah, deep respect for the team and the community, and excited to see this go live next week. All right, so the EF Ecosystem Support Program has put out their Q2 allocation update. So in Q2, they awarded a total of $7.8 million to Ethereum superstars, including, and then they're going to the list here. It's a long list. You can see the different categories: community and education, consensus layer, cryptography, developer tools layer 2, all this sort of stuff here. And it's a long list of kind of like people that were able to get funding. Some of the projects you may be aware of, you can kind of see Ethereum Cat Herders, I spoke about them the other day. Securium, I've spoken about them before. ChainSafe and ETH2 team, same with Sigma Prime. It's just scrolling down the list here. I'm not going to go through them all, of course. You can definitely check this out in the YouTube description. But yeah, good to see all the core devs and stuff be funded. L2 Beat as well. You know, you guys know I'm a big fan of L2 Beat. You can go donate to them as well if you want. But yeah, I mean, this is just really, really great to see that the Ethereum Foundation is putting their support out there for all these kind of like, I guess, public goods building on Ethereum. Not just at the core developer layer, but also the things that are sitting around it, like stuff like Securium and L2Beat and kind of like other things like CLR Fund and Rotkey portfolio tracking and stuff like that. Tax accounting software and things like that. So yeah, I'm really excited to see that these things have been funded, because funding is definitely this thing that a lot of people talk about when it comes to Ethereum, especially in the core developer layer, where people say, you know, the core devs should be funded in a better way, right? They should have like a more of a interest in the Ethereum protocol succeeding. There are a few things out there. I mean, the EF does a lot of stuff here, obviously, but a lot of the core developer teams are actually independent of the Ethereum Foundation. There's another thing that I don't think a lot of people are aware of that exists right now, and I think it is called, actually, if I bring it up here, I'm just bringing it up. It's called opengrants.com, and on that website, it basically has a grant that was created by someone called James Fickle. I think his name was Fickle, and he basically pledged over 3,000 ETH that vests over time to a bunch of core developers. Now, I went to that today because someone kind of like highlighted it to me, because I was talking to some people about like, how do we actually fund these core developers ongoing with ETH, with vested ETH? And essentially, this is vesting over time, and there was like 80 ETH or something that was ready to be released to these core developers, and anyone can actually hit the contract and release it. So I did it. I just hit the contract. I was like, this 80 ETH, let's release it. Let's get it out to the core developers that are on the smart contract, and they can kind of like claim it from there. Now, I want to do more than that. Like, I've been talking to a lot of people about this lately. I think that we can essentially harness the degeneracy within the ecosystem for good, just like how Clima DAO is doing it, where they basically forked the Olympus DAO kind of model and harnessing that kind of like speculative degeneracy, as people like to call it, to do good with it. I think the same principle can be applied to Ethereum core development funding, getting a lot of ETH into a kind of like a war chest, basically. Having a smart contract that automatically does it all. This just goes back to what Danny Ryan was talking about the other day as well, but essentially vesting it out to core developers, to keeping them, fully aligned and fully compensated for all the awesome work that they're doing. Now, there's a lot of logistical stuff to figure out here, but I mean, I think if myself and a few other big names within the ecosystem teamed up, and we had all of you guys pushing it in the community, we could even just do a donation drive to begin with. It wouldn't even have to be some kind of like Ponzi app in order to harness that speculative stuff. We could literally do a donation drive outside of Gitcoin grants and basically have like everyone pledge ETH. Like, could you imagine if we were able to get like 10,000 people pledge 1 ETH each, for example, right? I know maybe we're not going to get to that point, but there's a lot of people out there who have a considerable amount of ETH at this point, and if we can get, it wouldn't balance out exactly like that, but if we could get like 10,000 ETH, for example, pledged just as part of like a massive donation drive, I mean, that's a lot of money to send to these core developers that vest over time, and then we can keep adding to that over time as well. So I think we need to do that. I know the Ethereum Foundation has a lot of money, but at the same time, then we should be kind of like working around them, because they're a big organization. They're already funding a lot of things. They're slower to move sometimes as well. So yeah, I mean, this is something that I'm definitely thinking about a lot more lately. I will keep you guys updated on if any movement happens here. I'm trying to get the right people on board, and I'm trying to evangelize this to the right people in order to drive this home, because it can be done. It just needs someone to lead the charge, and who better than, I guess, like myself, Bankless, Defiant, all all those big names within the Ethereum ecosystem to lead this charge and get this going. Because at the end of the day, if we don't keep kind of like our core developers aligned with Ethereum, then I don't think that's very fair to them. They're doing so much amazing work for the Ethereum ecosystem and for the Ethereum protocol. They are the backbone of this ecosystem, and they should be fairly compensated for that. Not to say that they're necessarily underpaid, but they definitely do deserve more than what they get, I believe. Probably, there's probably not enough ETH in the world for that they deserve. But the thing is, if we can kind of like direct ETH to them, I think it'd be really healthy for the ecosystem. So I'll keep you guys updated on that. But if you want to check out this allocation update, definitely go to the YouTube description. There'll be a link there for you. So Aave V3 has been announced. V3 comes with a host of new features here, including the new portal feature, high efficiency mode, isolation mode, risk management improvements, L2 specific features, and community contributions. So what I wanted to focus on, obviously, you can go give this a read. But what I wanted to focus on was two things: the portal feature and the high efficiency mode feature. So what the portal feature is, it's basically a way for users to take their Aave positions across chains. You can see here that the portal sits in the middle, and then you have all these chains everywhere, such as Ethereum, Polygon, Arbitrum, ZK Sync, Starkware, and those are kind of like the layer 2s and side chains, and then a bunch of other networks sitting around it as well. So the way this kind of would work was that a user's supplied liquidity can be transferred from one network to another simply by burning A tokens on the original source network, e.g. Ethereum, while minting them on the destination network, e.g. Polygon. So it basically creates a network of interconnection built around this feature, which is called a port. Now, they say here, Portal will be able to bridge across. Will be able to use bridge solutions like Connext, Hot Protocol, AnySwap, Xpollinate, and others that tap into the Aave protocol liquidity to facilitate cross-chain interactions. This is what I actually thought was really cool, is the fact that they're not building their own bridge here. They're tapping into bridging solutions that already exist. So you could imagine like a Connext or a Hot Protocol liquidity pool for these A tokens, and you can send them across chains to different kind of like Aave instances and not have to close your position across different instances. So I thought that was a really cool feature. It does add more risk here, and it kind of like begs the question about liquidity fragmentation and stuff like that. But I think in the kind of like normal case or in the longer term case, it shouldn't be that big of an issue, but definitely something to kind of like keep an eye on and see how it plays out for Aave, because it could inform a lot of other, I guess, decisions, solutions, kind of mechanisms within other projects. And then the second major feature that I think that I wanted to discuss was high efficiency mode, or E mode for short. So E mode allows borrowers to ensure they are able to achieve the highest borrowing power with their own collateral. The code allows Aave governance to categorize assets based on the following parameters: a loan to value ratio, or LTV, a liquidation threshold, a liquidation bonus, and a custom and price oracle, which is optional. These factors will set each different asset in V3 in a particular category. And then Aave goes on to describe it here. E mode provides borrowers greater access to capital in the event they limit which assets they borrow by category. In other words, in E mode, borrowers can choose the category of assets they want to borrow. A category typically refers to a set of assets pegged to the same underlying asset. For example, stablecoins pegged to USD, assets pegged to ETH, etc. And there's an example here showing kind of like how this would work. So there would be like a stablecoin E mode where you can kind of like supply stablecoins and then borrow stablecoins within the same family. There's an ETH E mode. You can supply ETH and then borrow like ST ETH or all ETH or things like that. And then obviously a BTC E mode as well. This is just enabling kind of like greater capital efficiency, I think, for Aave, which I thought was really, really cool. It definitely does add a little bit more risk here as well, I think, because of the fact that you're taking maybe a lower LTV ratio and there could be like a higher liquidation risk, stuff like that. But still, a cool, innovative feature here. And then, there's a bunch of other features like isolation mode, which is intended to allow Aave governance to enact risk mitigation features when a new asset market is created on the protocol. So essentially allowing kind of, I guess, like isolated permissionless markets to form on Aave, which I thought was really cool. And there's a bunch of other features here. I mean, this is a pretty detailed post. You should definitely go check it out if you're interested. But, I saw a tweet from Emilio today, the one who published this post, where he basically said, for those of you who think that quote-unquote DeFi 1.0 can't innovate anymore, you should definitely go check out this post. And this is exactly it. Like, this is why I've always hated the kind of like DeFi 1.0 versus DeFi 2.0 terminology, because it's just marketing terms at the end of the day. Like Aave, I mean, all these bigger protocols, they're innovating, and they're doing some of the biggest innovations in the space. I mean, even Uniswap v3 did a huge innovation with concentrated liquidity, which a lot of projects seem to be trending towards in the AMM space as well. Aave is kind of like, I guess, Rari Capital, kind of like their fuse pools was very similar to some of the stuff that Aave is doing here, but Aave seems to be incorporating it and going beyond. I think the portal feature that they have is definitely unique. So there's a lot of innovation happening, not just with the newer protocols, but also the older ones as well. And it's funny that I say older ones. Aave V1 only went live at the start of 2020, so it's only been around for a couple of years at this point. But I know like some of the newer DeFi protocols have only been around for a few months, but we're all kind of like building towards the same kind of goal here. We're definitely all trying to innovate as much as we can. And just because something is an older protocol doesn't mean it's not innovating. So definitely just wanted to point that out. But definitely, yeah, go give this a read. It's got the full details of Aave V3 here. All right, so Greg Vardy from the Warp team at Nethermind put out this blog post that the Solidity to Cairo transpiler now has composability, or now supports composability. So basically, what this means is that the transpiler that I've been talking about before, which is basically called Warp, that allows developers to transpile their Solidity code to Cairo code to work on Starknet, now supports contract-to-contract calls, which means that essentially this is basically the final piece of the puzzle in the transpiler, which basically means that you can have like composability between all the contracts that exist obviously on Starknet and the contracts that you have that already exist on Layer 1 Ethereum as Solidity. So this is more of a developer-focused thing, but you can definitely go read the blog post for more information. But if you're a developer, this will mean more to you than obviously otherwise. But this is cool because, I mean, as I've said, and as you all know, Starknet is due to go live in alpha fashion on mainnet end of this month. And I think, once it's live, once it's kind of like ticking along, obviously there's going to be upgrades that coming to Starknet itself. It's going to be going through the alpha phases, the beta phases, and then the kind of like final phase over the coming years. But what's really going to count is the apps, right? How many apps can kind of like be deployed there, how easy it is for developers to transpile from Solidity to Cairo, because if it's very hard for them to do that, they're just not gonna put in the effort to do it, especially in the earlier days. So I think this is just really cool that this is already in time for Starknet's alpha launch here. All right, so Connext announced today that they finally support the Ethereum mainnet. So you can now transfer to and from Ethereum directly from Polygon, Phantom, BSC, Arbitrum, Avalanche, and XDAI. You can try this out at xpollinate.io. Obviously, a lot of bridging news lately that I've been talking about, but it's cool to see that Connext, one of the leading interoperability/bridging protocols, now supports the biggest ecosystem ever, I should say, in the crypto ecosystem right now. Obviously, the Ethereum we all know and love. So this is just another way for you to get your assets out and in and out of different kind of like EVM-compatible chains and EVM-compatible layer 2s. So definitely go check this out if you haven't already. So Immutable X's token is kind of like coming very, very soon, and their airdrop is now available to be claimed. So you can claim your rewards if you are eligible for them at market.x.immutable.com using your layer 2 wallet. Now, I've tried claiming mine all day and I keep getting an error. It keeps failing to claim, and apparently this is like a known issue and it's a common issue. Apparently if you keep trying, it'll eventually happen, but I haven't had any luck there. But essentially, IMX, I mean, I don't know, because I haven't been able to claim it, I don't know if it's transferable yet, these tokens, but I believe that they probably are, and there's probably someone who created like maybe a Uniswap or a SushiSwap pool or something like that, but I'm not sure if there's an active market for it or anything yet, but I'm pretty sure they're going live with this token imminently, since they've kind of like done this airdrop claims process here. So yeah, if you're eligible, the website will show you. So definitely go check that out. It'll be linked in the YouTube description below. So this account on Twitter called Shrimpy put together a great thread on a cross protocol, basically breaking down exactly how it works. I just wanted to highlight the thread because I've obviously been talking about a cross protocol a lot lately, one of those bridging protocols that seems to be innovating a lot. So this kind of like account gives a breakdown of how this works with L2s such as Arbitrum and Optimism. So definitely go read the thread here to kind of get more details around a cross protocol. Sanchan from the product team at Coinbase has put together, or at least released a video today detailing or showing off some of the NFT features that Coinbase is kind of doing on their own marketplace here. So you can see the interface in the video. I think he's talking over this. I haven't got any sound right now. But essentially, I mean, you can go watch this. It'll be linked in the YouTube description. But I mean, Coinbase is much further along with their NFT marketplace than I think a lot of people thought they were. They seem to already have, like, obviously connect your wallet, sign in with Coinbase Wallet or other Web3 enabled wallets, have like a kind of like nice little interface view here. Very similar to what we're used to on some of the other kind of, I guess, NFT websites and stuff like that. But I mean, there's only so many ways to do something like this. But cool to see that they're very far along now. They're also looking for feedback. Obviously Swagnimus Prime here said they want, we want them to support L2s, which of course we do. Not only on the NFT side, but we want Coinbase to support L2s in general. But yeah, definitely go check out this full video if you want to get the full context around this. It'll be linked in the YouTube description. Gitcoin Grants Round 12 has dates now. So December 1st to December 16th, 2021. That'll be the last Gitcoin Grants round of this year to finish us out, which is really, really cool. So, and then, I mean, Awoki put out this announcement, but he also kind of like followed it up this teaser, because you can see in the announcement image, it's got like a kind of like a kind of a nature vibe to it, or a solar punk vibe to it, which is something that Awoki has been going on about lately. And then he goes on to say in this next tweet, y'all thought the solar punk thing was just a LARP, and then a winky face. So seems to be something happening here. I'm not sure exactly what, but something exciting coming with Gitcoin Grants Round 12, or matching Round 12, which I'm very much looking forward to. And I talked about kind of like funding the ecosystem before, specifically with core devs and things like that. But obviously Gitcoin has played an absolutely massive role and will continue to play a massive role in this kind of, I guess, like in this initiatives. But when it comes to Gitcoin, they're good as like a broad base, or at least the Gitcoin Grants matching round. They're very, very good as like a broad base of not just kind of like one category of public goods, but like all categories of public goods. But I think that the hyper-targeted kind of like donation drives or hyper-targeted funding drives can do really well and can actually lead further and kind of like be very successful in their own right. And I mean, even Gitcoin could even run these things. Don't get me wrong. They could run it separate to a matching round. They could basically leverage their user base and their expertise to help with something like this. And I'm definitely going to be reaching out to the Gitcoin people if something kind of like cements itself further with what I'm trying to do here. But yeah, I don't want to give people the wrong idea that we can't like involve Gitcoin, or that Gitcoin is useless because we can just do things on our own. No way. Gitcoin is a massive part of this whole public funding kind of ecosystem, but I believe that more targeted funding of specific categories can go a long way, especially when it comes to core development at the end of the day. So Harry from MyCrypto here put out an interesting tweet thread where he basically goes through the security risks of just clicking links that kind of pop up on Twitter. So you can see Harry says, does this link take you to Uniswap? Do you trust it because Twitter says it takes you to Uniswap? Why don't you click it to find out? And you can see that the kind of like thumbnail here shows the classic Uniswap logo, then it shows uniswap.org as the URL, and then Uniswap. So this looks like a normal Uniswap link, right? There's nothing kind of like, there's no red flags here. You would click this without even having a second kind of like thought. But then you go on to kind of like the tweet thread, and Harry kind of says that this isn't actually the real Uniswap website. This is a different website. You can see that the different link here is twitter-unfurl-faker.herokuapp.com. So it's obviously not the kind of like the real Uniswap. And this is pretty bad actually, because how many people can like get phished by I guess like scammers abusing this sort of thing, where they basically pretend to be a site that they're not. And, unfortunately, this is a big deal within crypto, especially within the NFT scene. Like, the NFT scene is obviously onboarding a lot of new people into the crypto ecosystem that are not familiar with the best practices when it comes to crypto. They don't know that they shouldn't be giving their seed phrase or putting their seed phrase into anything ever, because their seed phrase is basically their private key at the end of the day. It gives the kind of like gives the attacker access to their entire MetaMask account. And they don't know that they should be using a hardware wallet as well. And I mean, even if you use a hardware wallet and you give your seed phrase away, it's going to be the same result. Like the attacker is still going to get access to all of your funds. So these kind of attacks are very, very scary because of the fact that Twitter just does nothing to flag this. It doesn't show the user anything. It just shows them exactly what essentially is Uniswap, and that's very scary. So I mean, Harry's a good follow for following along with these sorts of things. He always kind of like talks about this a lot always kind of like is at the forefront of protecting users from these new sorts of scams. That's his job at MyCrypto. He's part of the security and anti-phishing team at MyCrypto. But yeah, I just wanted to point this out for you guys to be more careful when doing a lot of things, especially when clicking links on Twitter. Just always kind of like check the URL. I mean, even hovering over it is bad because you can't see it, but in the bottom left, it'll give you a URL preview, and all it gives you is the Twitter shortened URL preview, which is like t.co/a bunch of random characters. The best way to test for it would probably be to kind of like right click it and then copy the URL and then paste it into your web browser without going to it and checking it out. And maybe even a safer way would be just to paste it into like a notepad or something like that, just to check that it's the actual URL and not a phishing website. So stay safe out there, guys. Make sure that you're kind of like using a hardware wallet, things like that, because it's very, very easy to get phished in this ecosystem. And definitely never, ever, 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 ever give your seed phrase to anyone, please. That's like the golden rule. Never, ever give your seed phrase to anyone. Never type it into your computer either. It should always be written on a physical piece of paper or physically kind of like, or exist physically and not online, and not kind of like saved in a text file or anything like that. Please don't do that, because as I said, if someone has access to that seed phrase, those 12 or 24 words, they have access to everything that is on there. It's basically your private key. So definitely keep that in mind when kind of like, spending time within this ecosystem. It's very, very important. And on that note, that's going to be it for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all next week. Thanks everyone.